So when we last left, excuse me, I am going to apologize. I'm probably going to cough through most of this session. I'm just coming over a cold. But when we last left the fellowship, they're at the last leg of their journey through the old forest, a journey that had not gone well. They had first gone there to hopefully escape the eye of the shadow, and actually ended up running into one of the shadow's most deadliest agents. And it seemed to go from bad to worse as the party came across Old Man Willow, who had almost lulled into a comatose sleep many of the party and dragged them into its roots, if not for the intervention of Goldberry, who is the wife of Tom Bombadil. So we pick up today. The fellowship has gone to the cottage of Tom and Goldberry, and they are convalescing. It's the day after your ordeal with Old Man Willow. Tom is nowhere to be seen. Goldberry, Moira, you had seen in the morning before you went out to see to Israel. The others are still sleeping. A much well-deserved and needed rest. You're still weary, but as you step outside to see to your loyal companion, and you look out across the forest, it looks different. The gray skies have now cleared. You can see birds as they flit from tree to tree. The air is cool, yet it has those smells of spring and the summer to come. When Israel sees you, she playfully paws at the ground with one of her front hooves. What thoughts are going through your mind, Moira?
Moira is mostly enjoying the calm of this place, the respite. She's been on edge and uneasy for days, weeks even, ever since they encountered the wargs. She pets Israel and lets the horse nibble on her hair, which normally she doesn't ever allow. But they're both in a better mood today. In spite of the darkness around them, there seems to be hope.
A gentle breeze washes over you, Moira. You enjoy the moment with your horse, nuzzling close, feeling the soft silk of her nose as it brushes against your hand, looking for some treat. You hear the sound of movement behind you, and you see the large, hulking form of Bardu taking up most of the doorway. Badu, it was a restless sleep for you. The only thing that allowed you to sleep at all was your utter exhaustion, but you were troubled by dark dreams. Dreams of a shadowed form that seemed to pull at the very fiber of your soul. Whispers of darkness in every corner. As you look out across the bright morning, you see the young woman, the Rohirrim, nuzzling and stroking the mane of her horse.
So Badu, as he walks out into the morning light, he kind of feels the warmth on his skin. It's inviting. It's a nice change of pace from the cold and wet that he's felt as of late. He stretches and reaches his arms high into the air, the full length of his body, taking up, much of the doorway and probably a little bit more than that. And as he sees Moira, he thinks back to what him and Barrowlass had talked about the night previous, and he's a little bit perturbed. It still kind of lingers in his mind, these things that Barrowlass is saying about her, and just his own demons as well. All these things kind of coming together, all at a really convenient time. And it's just disconcerting for him. So he kind of makes awkward eye contact, and his eyes, when he realizes his eyes kind of, move away, and he'll give a courteous nod, but kind of head off in a different direction to, get some room and probably stretch his limbs.
Yeah, Batu. So much like Moira, as you look out across the forest that surrounds this cottage, it feels different. It looks different. It doesn't look ominous. It doesn't look dark. It is almost welcoming. There's almost a sense of peace, which does a lot to settle your nerves as you walk off. Lily, your eyes flick open. You're asleep on a cot that was made, excuse me, hastily the night before. You can see the embers of the fire that is now burned down. You can smell that acrid smell of smoke. As your eyes drift around, you see several of your companions still asleep. And as your eyes kind of rest and fall where Moira had slept the night before, you see that her pallet is empty. The door is open to a bright, sunshiny morning. You can hear a gentle breeze as it kind of rolls across. Think about and it kind of makes these wind chimes that are hanging outside of Tom and Goldberry's door. It's like not with metal, but with wood, and it kind of makes that clunk, 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 sound.
Lily stretches, and then she's just feeling good this morning. And she bounces out of her bedroll and prepares and runs outside, looks at the sun and the breeze and just how very pleasant it is, and stretches again and sniffs the air to see if perhaps breakfast is cooking somewhere. Kind of bounces over. Moira, good morning. Badu, how are you doing?
Are you going outside, Lily? Maybe I missed something.
Oh, yeah, she went outside.
Okay. Well, you said the thing about breakfast, so that kind of threw me off, and maybe I thought that maybe I had misheard what you said. So you would definitely smell
breakfast from outside.
Yeah, you would probably smell breakfast from a mile away. But you would see this pot that is kind of set off to the side, and it's covered, but even you would smell that faint smell of like a porridge that was prepared earlier in the morning.
Yes. Lily looks around some more. Would there be oh great. Sometimes is this pot inside?
Yes, it's inside.
Okay.
It's setting off to the side of the hearth.
Gotcha. So
you know how in an in the old hearths, they would oftentimes have those iron hooks that they would swing over the
Right.
fire that swing out. So that's what
Right.
it's hanging from a hook.
And she looks at the other two, and since they didn't answer her pretty promptly enough, she goes bouncing off after her breakfast.
Yeah, well, I think Badu has actually, unless I misheard Kyle, I think Badu walked off to stretch
okay.
legs. So the only one you probably
Yeah.
would see is Moira as she's kind of talking gently to Isfael.
And she sees that she said good morning to her, but Moira's obviously pretty engrossed with talking to Isfael, unless you want to answer.
And she kind of looks over her shoulder. Morning, Lily.
And Lily's like, the sun is shining. That's so nice. Would she know if it's going to shine here for a while yet?
Yeah. You kind of look up at the sky. Your eyes kind of go across the trees, looking for all those little subtle signs that Lily is so keen on picking up. She senses that it's going to be good weather well into the future that she can see.
I think it'll be nice for a while too. Maybe the people won't be blaming me for the weather this time. I only read it, I don't make it.
I never blamed you for the rain. I can't speak for the others.
Glad to see some sun.
And probably glad to be dry. This is probably the first time in days that the two of you have not been in some state of either damp or soaked clothing.
And Lily looks down at her big hobbit feet, wiggles her toes. Oh, that feels so good. They're dry.
Moira looks down at her feet, and she's actually barefoot still at the moment. She hasn't bothered to put on her boots. Because it is nice, isn't it?
Lily kind of giggles that she says, I think I'll head in for some breakfast. What about you?
I'll come inside shortly.
All right. And she heads in for breakfast.
Yeah. As you're walking in through the doorway, Lily, you see Arafor as he's kind of rolling off of his pallet. Arafor, you've carried a burden for a long time now. The burden of leadership, the responsibility of leading this fellowship, something you have taken very much to heart. As when you've succeeded, you've enjoyed very few successes, I guess is what I should say, and you've carried, unfortunately, the challenges and setbacks of the fellowship very hard. As you slept through the night in Tom's cottage, it's the first night that you had restful and peaceful dreams. What would be a fond memory that Arafor would have?
As Air Force is kind of drifting in that state between sleep and being awake, his mind would go back to a couple nights before, or even just the most recent night, the dream that he had before they realized that the willow was out to get them. And he can't help but think back to those times. Him sitting at the table, talking with his mother. She always seemed so nice and so positive. Arafor's relationship with his father and with the culture. Yeah, he's talk with her, and he could share his frustrations and his hopes. and she would be there. Listen. And he remembers sitting at home. She's just made a meal. He's hardly even a boy at this. And she would tell him stories about the Rangers, about his father and the other Rangers, and would do. He remembers hearing those stories and smiling about how awesome it must have been. And it's kind of a bittersweet memory for him. Seeing the reality of the Rangers now in person, it doesn't seem like quite the scene that he expected it to be as a kid, but the moment that he had so far back still makes him.
Yeah. So error 4, in your dream, you smell cooking porridge. You hear the kind of that scraping sound of a lid being taken from a cast iron pot. As your eyes come open, you see Lily bent over, spooning out porridge into a bowl.
And the smile, the fond dream, the happy memory fades from Air Force's face as he wakes up. As he looks around, seeing the rest of everybody else, finally they have a moment of peace, a moment of quiet, a warm place, a good meal. Everyone else finally seems even happy for a moment. But despite this wonderful place, the people here, Tom and Goldberry, that are figures pretty much to them at this point. Arafor himself, who he tries his best not to show it, is by them in place. For some reason, he doesn't feel the peace that the other people feel. He just feels this deep anxiety of somebody who feels like they're about to be exposed for something. He just shakes his head, tries to shake the feeling, and gets up.
Error 4, is it something as Lily looks over at you, hearing the sound of you rousing from your palate? Lily, why don't you give me an insight check?
That would be a 9.
So something I want to tell all of the players: you guys are in the cottage of Tom and Goldberry. So everybody in the fellowship has advantage on rolls unless I tell you otherwise. So you actually have advantage on that insight.
That didn't help.
Yes, you just see, and he looks, he looks weary, road weary, like much of you do. Even though you've regained some strength from your trials in making your way through the old forest, he just looks like a man tired. Am I roboting?
No, you're fine. Just Jeff once in a while,
Probably
and not
me.
horribly.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing I can do about it. It's just
But he
weird
looks
connection stuff. Yeah, I imagine that Arafor's face is probably just a kind of a frown.
yeah, I can't hear you, Jeff.
Hello?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you there. I didn't hear anything. You said your face is kind of, and then you cut off for me.
Yeah, I said his face probably just looks exactly the same as it pretty much always does. Just barely a frown of just a concerned and
Very
tired
dour.
face.
I see Arafor as someone that always has this dour kind of look and serious look on his face almost at all times.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, like a man who carries the weight of responsibility at all times. Perfect. And Wari, what wakes you from this restful sleep?
Oh man. Probably something. Probably actually the lack of something, I would say. He's probably the last to wake up, and it's one of those like those you're startled awake because you remembered you had something to do. He couldn't remember what it was, but he looks around and no one's there. No one's inside the room in the cottage where he's at.
Yeah, you can hear the sound of murmured voices outside of the cottage. You see several bowls resting on the hutch by a basin that is used for cleaning, and with kind of stacked up neatly with spoons resting beside it. You can faintly smell porridge. Seems to permeate much of the cottage, and your stomach grumbles a little bit in protest against being so empty.
Yeah, Wari probably sits there for a minute or two, just trying to think of what woke him. What did he forget? There's something here. His stomach rumbles, and he kind of looks around, looks at the bowls, looks at the food, hears the talking, can't really make it out. Just kind of go, huh. Stands up and walks over to see if there's anything left to eat. Grabs something small. He's I don't think he's hungry. I think he's more just exhausted and just like wants to be done with it all kind of thing, and just goes about monotonously like a robot basically through his like morning routine.
Yeah, so you're able to. There's plenty of porridge left in this bowl, and amazingly it's still warm. You spoon some out into a bowl and eat it, and then you walk out of the cottage. So that begins your first day as your fellowship begins to rest and regain its strength. The day itself goes rather uneventfully. You spend your time talking amongst yourselves, maybe exploring parts of the forest near the cottage. You see very little of Tom and Goldberry in that first day. And it isn't until the sun starts to drift and drop behind the distant trees that Tom returns to the cottage. You hear him first. You hear him. He's humming a jolly tune that seems to just carry ever so effortlessly across the air, and he comes kind of skipping from the woods towards the cottage, um, dressed in the same sort of attire that he was the night before. He pleasantly says hello to you all, and asks how you are all doing.
Since it is like the very first day, Wari but just smile grimly, kind of like that half-hearted look, still exhausted, still kind of like just roboting throughout his morning, noon, and night. But seeing him skip a little bit, he kind of puts a little a little smile on the one side of his mouth as he says hello, and Tom skips past.
Lily, who seems to have recovered probably the fastest of anyone, sort of bounces, goes, Tom, hello. It's so good to see you. Thank you. She just starts chattering on, thank you for leaving us the porridge. And how are you? And she just starts chattering away.
Bud would probably be sitting. He'd be sitting down on a stump or log or something, and as Tom came up and greeted everybody, he would give a very, just kind of half-hearted nod. He still looks pretty tired, kind of pulling at his beard a little bit, and his eyes look almost glazed over. He probably still not all the way awake, still a little bit exhausted from everything that's been happening, and he's got some stuff on his mind.
So Tom would greet you all individually, and then he makes his way into his cottage, and the whole time he's singing this jolly song about the forest and the trees and the earth, the flowers, birds and the bees. And he prepares a meal. It's simple: bread, cheese, berries, mushrooms. And he sets the table all out for you all, and he encourages you all to eat. This will help you bring back your strength, he says, and this big broad smile spreads across his face. He goes, please come. Shake off the worries of the road. Enjoy the hospitality of Tom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you ever so much. Lily is, of course, perfectly happy to enjoy the hospitality of Tom. And very cheerful about it and very thankful for it, too.
So that's how it would go. So I'm not going to play it all out, but Tom would say that you guys can rest for as many days as you would like in his cottage. You would share stories while there. Goldberry is absent for the first few days of your convalescing. But at the end, you guys will have spent 7 days, 1 full week at Tom's cottage. And so I'm just wondering, what, if anything, would you want to accomplish or do while you are at resting here?
Real quick, I'm just assuming that that's going to negate any levels of exhaustion at this point.
Yep, your exhaustion will be gone.
Cool.
I believe I told everybody would lose 1 shadow as a result of staying here.
Sounds about right as well.
So could everybody just give me their current shadow totals? I know, Lily, you already told me yours is now at 0. Okay. Badu's at 3. 4 for Moira. Okay. And Wari, are you still at 8, Wari?
8? Good heavens.
I was trying to figure out if I was be at 8 at 7. I don't know if I dropped it before we ended last session or not.
Okay. I'm going to put you at 7.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. So So no worry. You've had something on your mind. Barrelass is quiet the first 2 days that you were there. I mean, she's pleasant. She smiles. But she doesn't talk much. She sits outside. You see her walking through the trees a few times. And at one morning, Moira, as you're out tending to Israfel, am I saying it right? Israel?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Israel. You see Barrelass walking out of the trees. No one else is up, or they haven't come out of the cottage yet. Tom is of course gone. He seems to disappear almost with the rising of the sun. Always there's something prepared to eat. Barrelass, she kind of stops for a second when she sees you, and she smiles. She has this look upon her face like she's weighing whether or not to approach. And then she does. She walks quietly up to you.
Moira gives her the kind of small, unsure smile, because Barrelass has been quite cold towards Moira and Arafor in particular, since they refused to chase after Badu and Wari any further. How are you this morning, Barrelass?
She smiles at you and says, "It is a glorious morning. They've all been very peaceful since we've come here." And she smiles at you.
It is a nice change. I had certainly grown road weary, and this is a welcome respite.
She reaches up and just gently runs a hand along the neck of Israel, assuming that your companion would allow her to do so.
She would.
And she just looks at your horse. She says, "This is truly a magnificent animal."
The horse of Rohan is unmatched in speed and in a battle as well, and in loyalty.
So I have heard. She's not looking at you. She does that. She just kind of absently just kind of strokes along the neck. And then she stops. May I say something to you, confide in you in some way, some fashion?
Of course.
She turns and faces you, and I do not find peace here.
Do you not?
She gently shakes her head. I know that I should, but for the whispers, and she touches the temple, her on the right side of her head, but the whispers that are in my head.
Lionel, have I been hearing anything while
No.
we're here? Yeah, Moira would, her brow would furrow. She goes, even here.
You see her. Oops, I'm sorry.
She's just kind of shaking her head. You still feel it.
You see her eyes searching your face, Moira. She slowly nods her head, and you see her left hand, whether intentional or not, it just comes up, and you know it grasps between her breasts where you know the ring rests. Very little piece. Do you think I will ever be free of it?
Well, it can be destroyed, can it not?
My heart wishes it so. And she leans in a little bit closer to you. She goes, but in truth, I do not know. I hope it's so. I have heard whispers, mind you. Just rumor that once you have borne a ring, you are forever scarred by it. That truly frightens me.
There are few of us who go through life without scars. It is not the scars that define you. It is what you do after them.
As she listens to your words, a comforted smile spreads across her face. I have treated you poorly, Moira. And for that, I am truly saddened. I do not know if it was truly me or the dark workings of the ring. But the three of us, and she looks off at the cottage. The three of us were truly lucky to have found you and your companions. Badu and Wari, they will draw strength from you. And she reaches out and she takes one of your hands in hers. Stay strong. Do not be weak like I was and give in to shadow.
I'll try. It is easier with Lily around especially, and Arafor too. And I have thought that perhaps it would be easier still if we were to help you. If we could weaken the shadow and destroy what you bear.
She smiles again at you warmly. It would be a lie if I said that did not gladden my heart to hear. I would never tell Wari and Badu. But I'm afraid of what is to come. And I think the more friends I have, the more strength I will be able to draw.
I am frightened as well. I think anyone with half a mind is frightened. Such things we face.
They say that the Witch King of Angmar polluted the Barrows. It was not always a dark place. Once it was a place of light, place of interment for great kings of old. Did you know that?
In truth, no. The horn we seek, the place we go, I know very little of it. It was not my burden to bear originally, but I have taken it on, and I will see it through.
Now, had you guys mentioned Arodrith at all to your new companions?
I don't think we have now.
Okay, I didn't
We've
think
said
so.
that
Okay.
we've taken up like this horn as an oath of someone who fell, but I don't think we've ever given
Yeah.
specifics.
Okay.
Yes, kind of what I'm
Yeah.
thinking too.
She would just slowly nod, and she would kind of look away over the neck of Israel, and she would look off in the distance. You would guess maybe roughly in the direction of the downs, and she would say, "Your oath to your fallen friend, your comrade."
Moira just nods.
She kind of sighs. It looks like she's about to say something, then thinks better of it and doesn't say it. She turns back to you, smiles. We will have to steel ourselves because the shadow will be strong there. But through our companionship, and she smiles kind of wryly now, maybe it'll see us through. And she gives a nice gentle pat to Israel's neck, and she walks off to the cottage.
Moira stays, idly stroking Israel and feeding her bits of grass, just thinking about it all.
So several days later, as you guys are at this cottage, Goldberry returns. You're the first to see Lily. She's walking up through the woods towards the cottage. She has a basket slung, and it's kind of hanging loosely from the crook of her arm. She just looks. Whenever you see her, she just seems to have this kind of this glow about her. And she smiles when she sees you, and she gives you a nod. Good day to
Lily.
you, Lily of the Shire.
Lily smiles back. And good day to you, Goldberry. I see you've been out collecting.
And she absently looks down at the basket. She says, "Oh, no, other business I've been about, and have you rested well?"
I've rested very well. It's lovely here. You can see that Lily's probably getting rosy in the cheek, maybe a little plumper again already.
And your companions, are they regaining their strength as well?
On the whole, there's a couple I'm a little concerned about. They're a little slow to come back. It's been a very hard road. But they are all improving.
And you see an eyebrow kind of rises at that. Well, you can't leave me guessing, little shireling. Which of your companions are you worried about?
Oh, Arafor for one. Takes things so seriously.
She laughs, and it's like this musical lilting thing. And she looks down at you. She says, "Ah, those rangers, they're always a dour sort."
Can you imagine? He thinks that my decisions somehow are his fault.
Heavy is the burden of leadership. She looks past you, Lily, towards the cottage. She looks back down at you and she says, "The rangers are a good sort."
Yes. I know he is.
There is strength in his name. Do you know who he is?
Just that he's Arafor.
It's a kingly name, is it not?
Yes, I suppose it is. I hadn't thought much about it. I hadn't thought to ask his whole name. It would seem like being pushy.
She kind of looks down at you. She kind of tilts her head a little bit. It's a very queer thing to say. Whatever do you mean? Never thought to ask his name.
There just seems to be kind of a barrier when you think about it somehow. Like, you know, it wouldn't be welcome.
I have often wondered if too much weight is given to the name and not the actual fiber of the man who wears it.
Well, that makes sense to me. He's been a good friend and a solid companion. I respect him greatly.
She smiles at you. She kind of weighs what you say. She goes, "You know Lily." Well, she would probably say Lily Took. You're not the first halfling of the Shire that I have known.
Really? Who else did you know?
Oh, I am certain that you would not know them. It was many of your lifetimes ago.
Oh. Well, then probably not.
But maybe if you ask me again at a different time, I will tell you. And she smiles.
Lily smiles back. She loves the story, especially one with hobbits in it.
Yeah. And I imagine there's quite a bit of story sharing and telling in the evenings as you all are gathered within the cottage. And so she bids you good day and carries on and goes into the cottage. Wari, you find yourself one evening sitting outside, smoking a pipe, sitting on this bench. And Tom is sitting next to you, smoking a pipe as well.
Warrior's just probably sitting there quietly, with, I wouldn't say concern on his face, but the weight of past events. And he's probably, and Tom and probably most of the others have probably seen it throughout the week as it's getting lighter and lighter, of course, and he's stopping to worry about things. But he's been quiet this last little bit.
And Tom takes a puff from his pipe and blows like several rings, a ring and then a ring within the ring and ring within a ring, almost making this bull's eye type effect before putting the pipe back into his teeth. And through it, he says, my good wife tells me that you intend to travel to the Downs.
Wari nods under his breath, just says, "Yep."
I would advise you not to go there.
He looks over to Tom. Why is that?
No good would come of it. Dark things live there now.
But it seems dark things live everywhere. Can't go anywhere without something lately. Just kind of trails off.
He takes another pipe draw from his pipe. I seldom go there of late.
But you actually go there?
Kind of chuckles. And it's this kind of this deep, right from the abdomen. And he says, but of course, I travel many of the lands of Middle Earth. Though I travel less of late, staying mostly to my forest here. And he kind of just uses the stem of his pipe just kind of to move it across this big arc.
Kind of like watches him a little bit. Is there a particular reason you don't venture around the lands that you dwell?
I have no need to. The world has changed much since, well, it's not the earth, or not the earth. It's not the world that I remember.
I unfortunately don't know much besides my mountain home. This is all very taxing. Strange. So what do you remember? How was it? Why should we not go to the Downs?
He looks at you, and you see this kind of twinkle in his eyes. He goes, and he taps you with that same stem from his pipe. He says, you of all people, Wari, should know that, the answer to that question.
He looks over to where he's probably last seen Barrow walk off to. Is it her?
He smiles at you and he says, and he nods his head, you are a wise dwarf, like much of your kin.
But where do we go?
He shrugs. He goes, I do not usually worry myself with the affairs of others. You wish to destroy the thing, do you not?
We do. Well, at least some of us do.
You will bring shadow into shadow.
But what about the others? We go for some horn thereafter.
Is it important to them?
I would assume so. They brought us here.
Many dark things lurk in the barrows. But
But how can we get rid of it if we don't go to the Barrow Downs?
again, he shrugs his shoulders. He goes, I think you know the answer to that as well.
All I've heard was legends, stories. How do I know which is true anymore? Which to follow?
You need to follow this. And he, with his pipe again, he pokes right at the center of your chest.
I don't know how to follow that anymore. My heart has been smushed, pulled, destroyed, built back up in the last few many days. I don't think it knows what it wants anymore.
He shakes his head sadly. Then you will be lost then. And he doesn't say it with any kind of malice. He just says it in this kind of just very matter of fact manner. Regain your strength, good dwarf, because you must find that compassion. It will be your armor against the shadow. No one can give it to you. You all must find that strength within yourselves.
He kind of like looks around to like everybody else, or at least where they went off to last. Might buy Dew for some food.
Yeah, you can, as you're kind of doing that, Wari, you can hear Badu's loud kind of baritone voice and a laugh, and you can hear the murmured conversation of a few of the others as in the cottage. You can see where Barrow has last walked off. She's not been quite as forthcoming with you in these few days, keeping more to herself.
Or he kind of like looks around and at the mention of being strong and all that, and he just remembers home and how dwarves are very clan-like and their strength is always with themselves. And all the dwarves that he's met so far have died or gone off or something. He hasn't had many people stick around besides Badu lately.
Yeah, and you probably, and thinking of your companion, he would probably be the one you're most concerned with. Much like Barrowlass has been rather isolated. Badu, though not isolated, kind of just carries with him, something is just off. You can't quite put your finger on it. And he hasn't told you. But
I think Worry's kind of, I wouldn't say knew it, but just had that gut feeling in the back of his, head that something was, something hasn't been right for a couple of days.
Yeah.
I guess he probably just sits there silently thinking about all this, smoking his pipe, blowing smoke rings.
Yeah. And you're kind of lulled to this sense of peace as Tom starts to gently hum and rock on this bench near you. And we'll fade from that scene. Badu, your time here at the cottage, while restful, allowing you to regain your strength, you're not visited again by those troubling dreams that you had that first night. Whatever magic is in this part of the wood seems to keep that at bay. Though you can't help but shake that feeling of unease. It's sort of like when you think someone's watching you, but you're not quite, but you don't see anyone. You go through your days talking with your companions, taking some time to yourself to walk through the woods. So one of these walks that you see Barrow Lass, and she's kind of going through, kind of bending down, kind of harvesting some mushrooms. And she has this basket with her, and you see that it's just near full with a plethora of mushrooms, lichens, roots, and whatnot that she's collecting. You know her to be a healer, so she's probably at the task of doing that. You hear this kind of this peeped voice, and you know Lily is not far afield from Barrow Lass, the two of them out collecting some of these herbs. And she turns as she hears like a branch snap at your approach, and she smiles at you.
So the last few days have been nice. It's been a good chance for his body to recover, and in fact, his body even feels better than it did before. It's not that part that's been worrying him; it's his mind. His mind's just been harrowed by these nightmares that he had, and even though he doesn't continue to have them, the thought of them has been glued to the back of his mind. He can't shake the idea. He can't shake the memory that he had when he was with when they were being attacked by Old Man Willow. He thinks back to it as much as he can, and he can't remember all of it. He only remembers bits and pieces. But every now and then it's, a whistle, or, the wind blows and he can feel that coldness again, completely out of place from where he is now. And it's been bogging down on him quite tirelessly. So as he goes out on one of these walks, he's been spending a lot of time trying to clear his head as much as possible, getting fresh air, trying to take in as much of this, of the calm portion of this forest as possible. And when he approaches, he sees Barrowlass, and he can hear Lily off in the distance. And she looks up at him and she smiles, but at the same time, he can still feel the weight of their mission, and it's just a lot for him to handle. He's by no means a weak man, but when it comes to the weight of responsibility, it's a whole nother matter. And he smiles back kind of distantly, his mind is elsewhere, and but he'll approach her still, hopefully to try to get his mind off of things. And
as you're approaching her, and just as you smile, you hear this whisper in your mind, and it's in a language you don't understand, and you feel it, that cold, and it drives right to your bone.
Does it come from any particular direction? Like, can he tell maybe where it's coming from?
You probably stop and you kind of turn and you look, because it almost sounds as if it was carried across the wind, but you feel no wind.
And he's probably halfway to Barrowlass when this happens, and he's grinning, but you can kind of just see his beard as it moves, really, more so than anything. And then as soon as he hears this pass by, these words just kind of fly by and through his mind, and then they're gone in an instant. His face turns stone cold, and he turns around slowly, knowing that the slightest movement in this experience very well could be dangerous, because he's not sure what or where that was, or what it was, or where it came from. And that bone-chilling cold just brings back so many bad memories. And he looks back to Barrowlass, and then down towards where she keeps the ring, and his face is just it's just completely flat, very, but his eyes are wide.
As you look where the ring is, Badu, you hear whispers in your mind, and you can't make it out. Barrowlass says to you, Badu, come, help me. And she's kneeling down, and you see her, she's got this small little trowel, and she's using it to harvest these mushrooms that are around the base of this great tree.
And he was staring at where the ring was, and when she speaks, it catches his attention for just a moment, and he looks her in the eye, and then just immediately back down to where the ring was, and the voices are gone. And he's troubled by that. That's probably worse than if he knew what was going on. He kind of shakes his head a little bit and bats his eyes a couple times, trying to, maybe clear away any sort of madness that might have come upon him. And he kind of nods his head and grunts a little bit, and heads over to where Barrowlass is. And just every so often, while they're kind of working together, he'll just look to the ring with wide eyes and a deep fear, not knowing what just happened.
Yeah. So you kneel down, and you several minutes go by as you're helping Barrowlass harvest these mushrooms and put them into a basket. Every time your eyes drift across where she keeps the ring, again, those whispers, kind of make their way through your waking mind. They're almost loud enough that you think she must hear you, but every time you look, your eyes drift back up to her face. She gives no indication that she hears those sounds as well. After a few minutes, she kind of falls back onto her heels and she wipes some sweat off of her brow, and in the process kind of puts a streak of dirt across her forehead. She smiles at you and says, "So, I've made a decision."
And his eyes kind of go back up to hers. He's still kind of kneeling, so they're just about eye level, and he's like really kind of back and forth with his focus. And she says this, and he brings his focus up to her. Oi.
Yes. And she kind of sighs a bit, and then she looks at you. She goes, Have you forgotten? You've forgotten the words that I told you so many days ago.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I'll ever forget those. What did you decide?
She shakes her head very slowly.
Well,
And his voice kind of stutters. He stammers a bit, and his eyes kind of drift back down towards the ring. Probably doesn't look good that he can't stop staring at her chest, but his eyes are kind of back and forth. He's like really trying not to draw attention to it, but every time he hears these whispers, and he almost misses, he almost doesn't hear what she says. He's,
sorry, come again. What was it you were saying? You decided something.
She reaches up with her left hand and she places it on your cheek. Pushing her fingers through the thick mat of hair that is your beard, and you can feel the warmth of her hand on your skin. She smiles and she goes, "Oh, Badu, I need you to promise me something."
and he looks around to see if there's anybody else there. And assuming he doesn't see anybody or doesn't see Lily, or if she's not close enough to really be in on the conversation, he'll lean in a little bit.
Hey, what is it?
I want you to remember my words. When we found you in the forest, mark them. I do not know what my future holds. I believe Moira, she has good in her. But
And
I also see that she is touched by the shadow. I fear that it might grow in her as it has in me. It was promised me.
and he looks kind of nervously now, and he kind of pulls away a little bit.
Hey, don't be talking like that.
And he kind of waves his hand up at her, kind of waving off the whole thing.
Hey, you're not what you think you are. It's all right. We're not gonna let anything happen.
She places her hand gently on your mouth to stop you, and she shakes her head sadly. She goes, I cannot dismiss what I am.
Kind of, he sighs, just kind of wary of the whole, just the whole ordeal.
Hey, I know you think that, but we're gonna fix it. I swear.
She looks as though she's about to say something to you, and then you hear the sound of Lily's voice as she's just chatting. Oh, look, saying something along the lines of, "Oh, you'll never guess what I just found, Barrow." And as you hear the sound of the hobbit making her way towards the two of you, Barrowlass leans in close to your ear, and you can feel the warmth of her breath as she whispers, "Mark my words. Don't trust her." And she pulls back from you, and she goes, "Oh, Lily, Badu has come to help us."
And he stands up all the way, and he looks at Lily, and but he's kind of caught off by Berlass's words. They had been spent most of this time at Tom's and Goldberry's, and it's been peaceful. And there hasn't even been strife internally amongst themselves. So for her to be bringing this up again, it does not bode well. And so his face is a little harrowed by that. But it's probably hard to tell with all of his matted hair all over the place. And it's only for a moment that he remains that way, but eventually he snaps back into the present, and kind of meets Lily and Barrowlass.
Just before that happens, as Barrowlass is pulling away from you, you once more hear those whispers in your mind, and then they fade.
Yeah, and it's a hanging sort of moment for him. Like everything's moving in slow motion as he's trying to process all of this, all of these different things all at the same time. It's a lot for him to take in, and these whispers, what are they? Like, where are they coming from? Is it coming from the ring? Is it the shadow? Is it the what dwells within? Is it Barrowlass? Is it there's so many thoughts running through his head. Is it just his own madness? Is it his past? What is it? And he finds it hard to focus for the rest of the remainder of their time. Even nights, he doesn't get much sleep as he's just awake, just thinking of all of these different things, and hearing those whispers, trying to replay them in his mind, seeing if he can figure out what they said, and he can never get it.
Badu, you don't have to try to think about the whispers. Every time you find your mind drifting and thinking about it, the whispers return. And that is probably what causes you to not get the same sort of peace that others have. And which now brings us to you, Arafor. It's the 5th day here in the forest. You found peace here. regained in strength. You see it in your companions. You feel that urge, that nagging to once again be on the path, to complete your oath to Arodrith, find the horn, and return his family's namesake. Where does Goldberry find you on this day?
I think Air4 is just general restlessness. Like he kind of goes a little stir crazy if he stays in the cottage too much. I think he's wandered down one of the paths a little bit, and he's just walking through the woods down one of the paths, just kind of taking a look at the different trees, and just trying to get some peace of mind out down the path.
Yeah, and it seems like out of nowhere, Goldberry appears in front of you, and she nods to you and smiles. May I walk a moment with you?
Oh, of course.
So you walk for a few minutes, maybe in silence, before Goldberry speaks. I have known many of the Dunedain in my time.
Is that so?
She nods her head. It is not out of my memory that that the great kingdom of Arnor
Of course. I'm Air of like at a loss for a moment, but I'm not used to speaking with people who have seen so much. It was a long time ago.
long to some, a moment to others. She would smile. She looks up at a bird that is just returning to its nest. You can hear the squeak of its hatchlings. They say some of your kind have the skill to talk with birds. Nay?
If it's so, I was not born with any such ability. At least not that I've come to know yet.
The birds have spoken to me. Would you care to hear what they have told me?
Yeah, Airfor is kind of his brow kind of goes up in curiosity. Like he's not exactly sure where this is going, but his curiosity is piqued. You just kind of give like a nod expectantly.
She stops walking and turns towards you. Birds, they tell me whispered rumors of a great evil rising in the north. You see her looking at she kind of just looking at you for some sort of reaction.
Airfor's face would turn back to its usual serious, if not dour, expression. We've heard similar tales.
Would it trouble you, Ranger, to know that they are not rumors?
Many things trouble me. This is nothing new.
It festers there.
My understanding is correct. It's the same force that seeks after one of our own.
She looks
So
back.
for why, I cannot say.
Along the path. You speak of your companion Moira.
Yes, we've heard troubling things regarding her. Worries me deeply. Entire groups of orcs supposedly looking for someone matching her exact descriptions in every way.
I was not going to mention it, but a shadow hangs over that one.
What I'm afraid of. She already has so much to deal with. Been a tough journey, especially for someone her age. And now, I fear it only gets darker from here.
She is young still, not lost to the shadow. She will need your strength, therefore, in the days to come.
Of course.
You must let go of your doubt, your anger. Those are the tools of the enemy.
If it were so easy to shed such emotions, I would have rid myself of them long ago.
She places a gentle hand on your shoulder. She comes in close, but it's not uncomfortable. She smiles at you. You come from a long line of great men. Trust in yourself, Arafor.
If only I knew what sort of line you spoke of. I don't. The only family I know is my foolish father. His made-up stories. Nothing else.
She shakes her head. She smiles at you. She doesn't say anything. She takes her hand off of your shoulder and she starts to walk away. She stops and she turns and she goes, "You were raised by him." She shakes her head just ever so gently. "He was not your father."
Erafor's face turns to one of bewilderment, confusion. What? No.
She doesn't look like she's going to stop. She just keeps walking along the path.
Erafor would pick up his pace, covering the distance that she's walked away from him and making her and catching back up with her.
Mm.
And he would actually walk in front of her and turn to face her and stop in front of the path. You cannot leave it there. No. What are you talking about?
She looks at you and so he never told you then that he was not your sire?
No. You didn't.
She just looks, she just searches your face. She goes, I knew your father. You're rightly named.
No. It can't be possible. Surely you know what a name such as the one I've been told is mine denotes. I'm no such man. I never have been.
One can deny its nature, but it doesn't make it so.
Arafor's mind is filled with more thoughts than he can physically process. Like his head is just spinning and swimming in just chaos, confusion.
She sees the confusion on your face, and she puts a hand on yours, and she says, long is the line of kings of Arnor. Many great kings of Arnor. She smiles at you.
It can't be true.
That same kind of lilting laugh that you've heard her do many times, she laughs. Why must you work so hard against it? Is it so hard to believe?
All my life, I lived in the shadow of a name that didn't belong. Told by my father that I'm something that I'm not, that he knew I wasn't. Why would he, if what you say is true, and why?
Your father said you're...
Why didn't he tell me?
She doesn't say father. He did not lie to you, Arafor. I cannot speak to the reason why you built this belief around yourself that you are lesser than who you are.
When enough people laugh at you for a name that you're given and tell you that it's not you, you can't help but build such walls.
She looks at you, and this this look of compassion comes across her face. She leans in close to you and she says, I cannot imagine what it was like for you.
Do you know who my actual... The words like stop and start as he speaks, like it's so much for him to try to think, nonetheless even try to speak.
Yeah, she starts walking along again. They're probably expecting you to walk along with her.
If that man wasn't my father, who was?
Will that bring you peace? Peace, Arafor? If I give you this name, will it change?
A long way away from peace. Whether I know it or not, it would certainly help.
Well, then I will give it to you then. And she leans in and she whispers in your ear the name of your father. I'm not going to say it out loud because I will send it to you privately. And it will be up to you whether
Awesome.
or not you would like to share it or with anyone else. What is your reaction as she whispers the name, the true name of your father and of your line?
Yeah, Aerofor's face would just like fall. His face, I imagine, would almost look like solemn, like almost one of loss, but it's not. It's a face of someone whose entire life, this entire story that they've woven around their own mind and around their own past, that entire tapestry of lies and confusion just falls into tatters and pulls apart, and he doesn't know what it means or what to feel yet. There's too many things to feel for him to know how to react. So he's just left stunned in a mixture of surprise and awe.
Yeah. So I figured this. I guess the scene would kind of play out with the two of you just kind of walking off further into the forest with maybe some other conversation happening, maybe some questions that you would ask, and we could definitely manage those outside of this session, if you are okay with that.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. And which brings us to the evening of your last day. You spent a week at excuse me, at the home of Tom Bombadil. And it's in this evening that Carol wants to smoke with Tom. Okay. What would that scene look like, Lily?
I think that Lily would find Tom sitting out there, and smoking, and she would sit down and take her old pipe out and apologize for not having any long bottom leaf left, but I don't know where she would have actually gotten something to smoke. Possibly Tom would have given her something. And just sit there, and he would blow his smoke rings and she would blow hers, trying to send them through his. When he was doing fancy ones, her little ones would fly through. But she couldn't really keep up. Couldn't keep up with him, but she had a good time trying, and they enjoyed it very much. And she was also somewhat pensive because she can't really smoke without thinking of Orodreth. And she gets out the pipe that Orodreth had given her that had gotten broken when she jumped off her pony. And she said, didn't want to really tell him the whole story necessarily, but she wanted to tell him, that this was given to her by her fallen comrade. And that when she smokes, she thinks of Orodreth and of Moira and their friendship. It's probably a pretty companionable smoke.
Yeah. So I would imagine that you. I'm probably not going to roleplay this all out. But I would imagine you guys would chat a lot about the Shire. Because the Shire is so close to the Old Forest. You've heard so many tale of Tom Bombadil. There's probably that this starstruck kind of effect, even this many days after. So one of the things that does happen, though, is Tom would say to you, Lily took ever you Shire folk have escaped the eye of the enemy. And he says, you go into the Barrows. A very unlikely place for a hobbit. Not very safe either.
She nods. Her eyes are pretty big, thinking about that.
I would tell you what awaits you there, but would not want to scare you. Stay close to your companions.
Yes. I don't know if I'm more scared that you won't tell me, or if I would be if you did.
Trust old Tom.
Of course. I do
And
know.
he would kind
my
of
path,
go, whoops, I'm
That's-
sorry.
So I do know that my path lies with them. I've joined in their vow, and I will do this with them.
I see great strength in your fellowship.
And Lily nods at him.
And he kind of reflects a bit and he says, you don't know if he's saying it to you, Lily, or just saying it. In retrospect, it may be good that a hobbit is with them. And I think it would be probably one of those moments where where you just kind of instruct each other on talking about the virtues of pipe tobacco and blowing some smoke rings.
Yes. Lily mourns again the loss of her long bottom leaf. Had I known we would see you, I would have saved us some of that last bit. But it seemed to cheer everyone up, so I shared it.
Yeah. So on the last evening, after your meals have been consumed and things have been set aside, belts have been loosened, and folks are relaxing, you guys are heading out to the Barrows the following day. Tom has agreed to lead you to the boundary of the Old Forest where it meets the Barrows. Goldberry stands up and announces that she has gifts for you all. And I think we'll take a break at that. So let's take a quick little, maybe 5-minute break, and then we'll pick up with the gifts and then
Sounds good.
heading to the Barrows.
Movie?
So with the meal finished and Tom taking his spot near the hearth, feet up, um, smoke rising up from his pipe, Goldberry rises and announces to you all, tomorrow you set back out on your path, your journey. I would like to give you all a gift. And she goes over to a chest and she opens it. And from inside that, she draws out a smaller chest and she brings it over to the table and opens it. Yes, you are in the cottage. Yes. Erefor, son of Ferion. I give you this. The burden of leadership is difficult. I give to you the star of Alderaan, the huntsman. May it guide you to safe refuge when it seems there is none to be had. And she draws forth from this smaller chest and hands you this silver brooch, a cloak pin in the shape of a seven-pointed star. Lily took Hobbit of the Shire. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you going to say something, Arafor?
No, I can wait. Go ahead.
And so she would smile and nod to you, Arafor, as she sets this in your hand. Then she turns to you, Lily. Lily Took, much sorrow have you suffered in such a short time. But through that sorrow, you remain hopeful. And you see her, she draws forth this pipe, and you immediately recognize it as a rodless pipe, whole once more. May your spirit, like this pipe, mend your heart and remember happier times. And she hands it to you.
Lily takes it. Her hands are just shaking, and she tears up. Thank you so much.
She smiles down at you.
This pipe means a lot. And she kind of cradles it in her hands.
She turns back to the chest. Moira, a gift I have for you is an ancient one, crafted for the kings of old and those who protected them. She reaches in and it's this kind of this neatly folded, and you see the glint of linked chain. She draws forth a fine coat of mail. Forged for the great kings of Arnor, may it protect you from the darkness and give hope to your fellows.
Oh. Oh, thank you.
As you take this coat of mail, Moira, you're surprised at the craftsmanship and how light it is. She nods to you. Badu. She brings forth. Yeah, you kind of grunt.
Yeah.
She laughs. She laughs a little bit at that, and she brings forth this this sheathed. Oh, actually, it's probably not sheathed. This dagger. It's a polished ebony claw with a bone handle wrapped in leather. This is from the great bear Oberyn, and much like he had great courage, that you may have the courage to mend your wounds, old and new. And she smiles at you and hands you this dagger.
And he takes it kind of confused almost as to the significance. It's almost lost on him, but when he holds it, it feels comfortable, almost like he's almost familiar. And he nods his head gratefully and will put it away in a pocket.
Perfect. She turns back to this chest. Wari, a gift I have for you is one woven of Hithelane. And she draws out this coil of gray rope. May this rope aid you, as it has aided many of my kith.
Worry takes the rope. And sorry, I can't help myself. But what about the shiny daggers?
She laughs. And she smiles at you, Wari. And I'm glad that you can't help yourself. And then finally she looks at Barrelast. She takes nothing from the chest for her. And she merely steps in close, and you see her whisper something in Barrelast's ear. And you see a tear run down her cheek, Barrelast's cheek. And she nods as Goldberry steps back. These gifts we give you will aid you on the road ahead. Go. Rest. There's a long journey ahead for you all.
Yeah, Arafor would kind of the pin over in his hand a couple times before pinning it up his cloak, kind of looking at it for a moment and then up at you. Do us a great honor with your gifts and your hospitality. I hope they'll be to it.
Goldberry acknowledges that with a nod. And she goes and she sits with Tom. And Tom starts to sing a song. And unless you guys do anything, the camera would go slowly fade to black. And it opens up on the next morning as you guys are making sure all your gear is packed and ready. And you are reprovisioned. He doesn't sleep, Badu. You are reprovisioned and ready to set out. When you're ready, Tom goes to the head of your party and he starts skipping along, singing a song, not even looking over his shoulder to see if you guys are following. And as he gets ready to leave, Barrowlass calls to you, Wari. She says, I'm sorry, Wari. I've been so distant these past few days. But I want you to be the first I tell. I will not be going with you.
Wari's jaw kind of goes slack.
Her eyes kind of drift past you to the others as they're making preparations. I have spoken with Goldberry, and she and Tom have agreed that I can stay here with them. I will be safe, and so will the ring.
Wari kind of looks down at the ring. I don't think you'll really ever be safe, Barrowlass, unless it's gone.
It would be more dangerous if I go with you into the Barrows. It would be as like a beacon to the agents of the enemy.
Wari kind of scratches his head and looks between Barrowlass and Badu. Tom mentioned not to bring something to the Barrow Downs, and he looks to Badu. But I thought he was referring to him.
No, and probably at that moment, you probably kind of flash back to earlier in the week. You had seen Barrowlass talking with, excuse me, talking with Goldberry off in one of the many natural gardens that Tom and Goldberry nurture around their cottage. And then you kind of flash back. You know, it's one of those hindsight moments where you kind of put all those pieces together.
So are you going to live out your life here?
She smiles at you, Wari. She gets this kind of this far off look. And she's like, I hope to.
I think Wari's kind of taken back by that response. I don't think he was expecting it at all. I think he's just quiet.
At that point, I feel like Badu's probably done packing up and might come over to the two of them. And he looks to Wari and Barrowlass, and he's like,
Wait, we ready to go then?
Yeah, you and I are.
Wait, yeah, okay. Are we ready or not?
he's like lost, like that comes way over his head, and he's like, what the hell are you talking about? He was looking at Barrowlass and Wari like they know something he doesn't.
She'll be staying here, Badu.
Oh,
And he looks at Barrowlass and like is pointing at her.
wait, staying. Why?
She nods her head. It will be better, Badu. It'll be better if I stay here.
You sure about that? I don't know if I trust leaving you somewhere, you know.
And he kind of like gestures towards the ring.
You know, with the whole thing and whatnot and stuff. You know.
Yeah. She places her hand over the ring. She says to the two of you, she says, when I first came here, I felt ill at ease, as though something was wrong, and I could not for the life of me figure out what it was. The longer I stayed here, I knew. And Goldberry confirmed it. It's as though the ring, though it is still here, it is sheltered from me in some way.
Wait, so you're saying that the ring has no power here?
He kind of leans in as he says that.
Yeah, she shakes her head no.
Oh.
She goes, I can't truly explain it. It's as though it has less power over me.
Well, what if we left the ring here and you went home?
And he kind of he's like grinning, like, yeah, I just solved all of our problems.
And she smiles at that. She said, I had already asked that. Goldberry has told me Tom does not care for things like this. He would end up losing it.
Right, well, that's not good then, I guess. I guess if it's safer here, we could just...
And he's looking at Wari at this point.
We could go to the Barrow Downs, figure out how to get rid of it, and then come back and do that. Aye.
Well, he looks to Badu. That is possible. I've heard of a few other things that can help get rid of a ring, but he kind of like starts looking back and forth between Baralas, Badu, and then the rest of the group. I'm assuming Lily and Arafor and Moira are all together. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
and you can see that their preparations are just about done.
But I think Mori feels that kind of like Baralas was the only like rope holding the two groups together. Now it's just two people tagging along.
About then, Lily looks over. Barrow, worry. Come. It's about time to leave. Of course, she doesn't really realize, not Barrow. Did I say that? Badu and worry. She doesn't realize that Barrow isn't coming. Barrow, come along.
And Badu kind of kneels down to Wari, and he's kind of like going over the playbook, you know, like he's huddled up with him. He's like,
all right, so let's just leave her here and be really fast and figure out how to get rid of the ring, and then we come back and then we'll just go get rid of it from there. But if we can keep her here, I guess that could save us some trouble, you know.
I know, but as much as it's been trouble, she's helped. She helped get you out of the tree.
Aye. That's true, but I have a feeling that this place that we're going, she's not very welcome.
Kind of looks over to Paralas, who's I guess they're taking a step away from her and just, I don't like it either, but I mean, it is safer here. It's not a threat to the others.
Aye, and we can, like, gain their trust, and then maybe they'll help us destroy the ring. Less out of obligation.
All right, just kind of nods back and forth now.
You hear some commotion over by the others, and you see Tom starts humming and singing a song and starts to skip away to the east towards the downs. And you see the others starting to fall in and follow him.
I don't think we have much else of a choice.
Barrow says, quickly, go. They will need you. It is not safe where they go. Be safer now that I am staying here. And then she would just say one last thing to you, Badu. She would say, do not forget my counsel.
And he kind of like cocks his head like nervously, like, and will kind of like, pull Wari, out now and away, kind of wave to her as they head off. But he feels a little bit more relieved that they don't have the looming threat of Barrowlass's power, and not only that, but the dissension that she brought to the fellowship as a whole was just becoming a lot for him. So this is a good move.
Yeah. So following Tom, it's you make a rather quick journey through the remainder of the old forest. It's a clear, sunny day, a little bit cooler than normal. And he rolls a nat 20 on his survival roll. And so the gentle breeze greets you as you make your way to the outskirts of the town. And Tom stops, and lying before you is this grassy with gentle rolling hills. And as you notice, dotted across many of these grassy knolls, you see like these like small monoliths or stones arranged. And you know you're looking upon the Barrow Downs. You travel. So I guess the first question that I would have, I guess, would be, how does your fellowship intend on searching for where the horn lays, or its resting place?
This was something I was going to ask. So, I mean, Air Force is by no means a complete expert on the Barrow Downs, but he has been here. It's one of his known areas.
Yep.
So, like an item of that kind of importance would probably be buried like in a certain type of place. And would Air Force know, maybe even if not specifically, maybe like certain areas that would be more likely to have high profile people rather than not something like that? Maybe
well, you know that many of the old kings were buried here in the time of Arnor, and then when it was the Three Kingdoms. So you would know that the time of the horn would have been around the kingdom of Cardolan. And because you are familiar enough with the Downs, you could probably be able to narrow down the rough area, square area where the barrows would be, where the champions of that time were buried or interned. So that would definitely help. So you spend why don't you give me a survival roll, and I believe you have advantage, right?
I do, and I have double proficiency as well.
Perfect.
So that is going to be 21.
Yeah. You make good time, like kind of weaving your way through these ancient warrens that surround you. The weather is fair, I guess. The mornings are cool, but the day's warm. And when there's clouds in the sky, there are few. One of the other things that you're able to do is when you sense um, agents or whatnot moving through the warrens, you're able to get shelter for your company as you move. And so 3 days passed, and you get to that area of the downs that you are looking for, where the great men of Cardolan were interred before the downs were sullied by the agents of the enemy. And you spend some time searching and looking at some of these warrens. Many of the markings that mark the names or the lineage of the men or family interred are worn by time and weather. It's the evening of the evening of the third night as you guys are camped that you get this sense, I guess, Arafor. Arsinue is the name of the horn. You sense that you're close, Arafor, or closer than you have been. No, Arsinue is the name of the horn.
After they've made it,
yes,
turn to the rest of the party and say,
so as you're making
sorry. Yeah, he would just turn to the others and say, if my knowledge of history is correct and close enough, we be getting pretty close. He says that, and there's just kind of this bit of anticipation and nervousness in his voice. Like he's not sure if it's so, like being so close to this goal that they've been on for now a good day. Kind of there's this buildup of like hope mixed with and tempered against potential disappointment.
Yeah, and it's at that moment, Arafor, as you're making camp, you look up in a nearby kind of a scrub tree, probably the only stance, maybe 10, 15 feet high. It's very lightly covered in leaves. You hear this squawk, and you look, and there's this black craven sitting there, and it's kind of moving, shuffling along with its talon feet along this branch, and it kind of tilts its head as it looks down at you. And you know that's an ill tiding.
Yeah, Arafor's face would kind of sour at the sound and turning and looking up and seeing it. And I think he would just say it. Excuse me. Bird is a bad omen. Be on the out. Ready yourselves.
And sooner than those words leave your lip, Arafor, and you hear ah, ah, ah. And as you turn back to this tree, there's a good 24 of these craven sitting there. And their wings are kind of twitching and flapping.
I think that Lily would like to find a place to hide, just a normal hiding thing if she could try.
Yeah, like a stealth. You can definitely do that.
Alrighty. I have a total of 14.
Okay. Wari, you can give me a lore roll if you'd like. Yeah, it is black. It's like tar black. These birds.
Okay, sure. It was just one of those things when I was reading about ravens and dwarves before leveling up, and I was like, lore is 17.
You would remember, dwarves are a long-lived race. Craven are often associated as agents of shadow, used to spy by the enemy.
All right, so I would probably do the same
Arafor,
thing.
Arafor would know that as well.
Yeah, sorry, I would as Arafor probably mentions it, and I would think that I'd probably do like Lily and try to hide or make myself less visible.
These creatures are eyes of the enemy. Need to be careful. We can find a place to avoid their sight. Need to be on our guard. If these things are close,
Moira-
things would be near.
Moira kind of puts the hood of her cloak up and feels the unease.
I mean, these birds have already seen us, right?
Yes. Well, maybe they haven't seen you, Lily.
Gotcha.
As you were saying that, Moira, and you look to Arafor, you notice the cloak clasp, that star that is there. It almost seems to be glowing with this very faint silver light.
She would kind of gesture to it and then touch her own clasp and say, "What was it that she gave you? It seems special."
Therefore, we kind of look down and like seeing it kind of shimmer with this light. Would he know anything about this thing that he was given?
So the minute you do that, you Goldberry's words come back to you when she had said, "May it guide you to safe refuge when it seems none is to be had." And you remember that Alderon is just one of the many names used by the huntsman, who's one of the Valar. Legend speaks that he was the most fervent in hunting the shadow and destroying it. It is said that the Star of Alderon will guide the one who possesses it to a place where they are shielded from the eyes of the shadow and from his many agents.
And seeing the glow of the star, he would kind of instinctively put his hand up on it, like his fingers coming down the sides of some of the points. Of course, the star. Follow me.
Yeah,
I can find us a safe place And it's like he kind of just begins almost like he doesn't know exactly where he's going, but he knows something about it feels right.
Yeah, and as you start heading off along the grassed, overgrown path, these craven alight and take off into the sky, and you feel just drawn to this place. It takes you probably the remainder of the daylight to find the spot you're looking for. But when you get there, you know that's where it is. This is the place you must go, and it's this little hollow. It's surrounded by these small little trees, and when you enter, you get this sense that, like I said, this is the place you were drawn to.
And he would, I imagine, would feel this kind of sense of peace being in this place. He would just turn to everybody else and say, "Don't ask me exactly how I know, but we'll be safe here."
How long would it have taken us to get to this place since the Craven saw us?
Probably hour and a half.
And I'm assuming we were kind of running or walking at a great clip.
I don't think you were running. I just think Arafor was moving with purpose.
I'll look over to Arafor and be like, "Whew, not going to ask, but thank you for getting us out of those sights of the birds."
And Arafor, you would notice that the clasp on your cloak is no longer glowing.
Yeah, alright, so then I guess I'll ask, what the hell was all that?
This brooch Barry gave me. Something about it, it's hard to describe, but I knew it would bring her safe.
Alright, well that was not as hard as you made it seem, okay, so, I mean, maybe next time just say that, I don't know.
That said, the eyes of the enemy have already seen us. They might not see us in this place, but they'll know we're here. When we're ready to move, we'll need to move carefully but quickly.
So, Lionel, what is this place exactly? Like, what would it be like? I mean, is it like a cubby? Like, I mean, I'm thinking if
it's like
nightfall
nestled.
now.
It's like nestled between these small hills.
Okay.
So it's not big enough to be called a valley or anything like that, but it's so it's shallow enough. It's like like an indentation, or where several of these small little hillocks meet.
Mm-hmm.
And it
So
seems
kind
to
of
be it seems to be sheltered by these small copse of trees that kind of grow around it.
okay, but it for the most part like somewhat open of an area.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you look up, you can see the sky is starting to darken, and you're starting
Right.
to see stars appear.
Okay.
So it's up to you all if you trust the ranger's word that this place is safe. I mean, you're still in the downs.
I think Lily would trust him. She's trusted him a long time, and she believes in him. She's seen some strange things happen, so another strange thing is not that unusual.
Vori would look around and just be like, so why is the shadow after us? We
Oh,
left it, as far as I was concerned, with Goodberry and Tom.
Worry. Why is the shadow after anyone or everyone?
Well, if it has
She
something it
doesn't-
wants.
She doesn't mention Moira. I don't know. I may want anybody who comes in here. Tom said this place is not safe.
The Barrows is
He
a place
did.
tainted with shadow. Anyone
Yes.
who enters it is in their eyes.
Well then,
Oi.
why are we coming here again?
To get the horn, remember? We have a quest, a promise, an oath that we made.
Badu, I think you've kept a secret, or I believe you may have kept a secret, but maybe you've shared it. In the 3 days that you have journeyed through the Barrows are 3 days that you have been revisited by the Whispers.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. I wouldn't call it a secret. I mean, he's not like keeping it a secret intentionally, but he thinks he's going crazy. So, he would probably have kept that to himself. It's just been nagging at him constantly. But I wouldn't say. I don't think he would have like mentioned anything. He's still not even doesn't even know what it is. There's no point in saying something if you can't even explain it. So, as far as he's concerned. He would at this point probably pull Arafor kind of aside, maybe away from, maybe just so that he's not addressing everybody.
Aye, so this may be out of the shadow's eyes, but is it safe from their assault?
And he's kind of like looking around at how open it is, kind of seeing, how defendable of a position this might be if they were to make camp. He just sees several like open slots, several openings that they could be attacked from.
Though they're few and hard to find these days, there are some places, even in dark places, the shadow dares not go. Places of light. Places blessed by better men than any of us have known. If the star has led us here, I'm sure it'll be okay.
Aye, alright. I trust you, but we need to get a fire going if we're gonna have any sort of light.
And he would probably break off to go maybe to some of the trees that are up towards, the upper portions of this little kind of semi-valley, and maybe try and chop off some wood to start a fire. Just assuming that they've planned to bed down here for the night as it starts to get late.
Yeah. You get a sense that I believe that is Arafor's plan, is that this is the place where you guys can safely camp, as guided by his star.
And yeah, Lily lays out her bedroll in a quiet corner that perhaps isn't too noticeable.
So you guys quickly make your camp, have your meal, set whatever watch you would have, and turn in for the night. And Arafor, you're sitting by the campfire. You know me oh so well. You're sitting by the campfire, and you hear the rustling of grass, a snap of a dry branch off in the distance. As you turn from the fire and squint, you almost think you see a shadowed form moving amongst these short scrub trees.
Yeah, Arafor's head would twist and suddenly at the sound, looking over towards it, and he sees this shadow form. And he's going to stand up from where he was sitting near the fire and try to make his way quietly in that direction to try to get a better look.
Yeah, you see it. It's moving. If it's trying to move quietly, it's failing miserably. You see it dip behind the narrow trunk of one of these trees and then reappear on the other side. And then you hear the noise as it kind of like rolls out of sight.
I see you over there. Who's there?
You hear nothing.
Arafor is gonna, with his hand on the hilt of his, continue treading carefully closer.
Yeah, anyone who thinks they might have woken up can give me what would that be? A perception roll. To see if you wake up. I just put it in the chat. Arafor, what did you say you were doing?
His hand is on the hilt of his sword, and he's walking, like, almost stalking, as if he was, like, following, tracking something. So he's walking very carefully up towards it, so he's ready to do something at a moment's notice.
Okay. Moira, the sound of Arafor's voice rouses you from your slumber. And as you kind of turn your head to look, you see him hand on sword hilt moving towards the darkness of the of this clearing's periphery. As you draw closer, Arafor, you see the shadow form kind of rising up, probably about a dozen feet from you. You hear a voice say, "Don't hurt me." And you see two arms come up.
Yeah, Arafor will pull the sword about halfway out of teeth at the sound of the voice. But kind of holding it there steady for now. Who's there? Come into the light where I can see you.
Arms still up, the form staggers towards you. 10, 8, 6 feet away, and then it comes close enough into the light that your eyes can see, aided by the stars above. It's definitely a human boy, maybe in his late teens. You see a mop of dark hair, wet with sweat, which causes it to cling to his forehead. You see his face is dirty and his clothing is torn. You see a cloak kind of just loosely of brown, just loosely hanging at his shoulders. I'm Thomas. I saw your fire. And he points to the fire.
Arafor slides the sword back down the sheath and stays on the hilt of it. Why are you here, Thomas?
Well, he takes a tentative step towards you, and as he does, you can see that it is a young boy. He has the makings of some form of beard. that just caused very light whiskers on his chin. He looks at you. You see that sweat and tears have streaked the dirt on his face. He goes, I saw it, a ghost. It's as though maybe he didn't hear your question. Moira, what are you doing?
Moira has heard all this, and she saw Orfor walking out. And at first she kind of stood up, or caught up on her knees, and then stood up and has taken a few steps forward, and she's listening, trying to understand what's happening and why this boy would be here. Can I roll an insight check?
You certainly can.
Oh, dang. Unfortunately, that's only an 8.
Yeah, he looks from what you can garner from where your position is. It sounds as though his voice is kind of shaking with fear. You had heard him mention you had heard him say ghost.
Yeah, I think with that low of an insight, Moira hears the young in his voice, and maybe she can just make out a little bit of his face, and almost a protective instinct. Orfor, let him come join us. He sounds scared.
He looks.
Therefore looks the.
Oh, sorry.
Therefore looks the boy up and down. You have anything on you? Any weapons? Tell me now.
He shakes his head no. He goes, I did, but I dropped it as I ran, and I didn't dare to stop it or to find it or even to pick it up.
Come.
Therefore looks back towards Moira with this look of just like a raised and concerned eyebrow.
And Moira's watching the boy now. And she's just like kind of almost holding out her hand towards him. Come on, you can come sit by the fire. You must be frightened.
Yeah, you would guess that he's probably close in age to you, Moira. And you would mark him as a Breelander by his stocky stature, shorter height, and the curly nap of hair that he has. He moves cautiously to the fire, keeping his eyes going between you, Arafor, and Moira. And then he notices the others still in their bedrolls. And he goes, as he gets closer to the fire, he goes, my father, and he starts to cry. He's like,
Did we just lose you now?
what? Are we here still?
Looks like everybody.
Yeah, I think everything broke for like
think
half
you're
a
back.
second.
Yeah, I saw that.
thought
It
it was
was like
just
this
me.
little hiccup, little Google's hiccup.
Oh man.
I thought it had kicked me out for a second. I was like, oh no, I'm gone. I'm done.
Right.
Yeah, I checked to make sure it was still live, so we're good.
I thought the same thing too.
That was the 3
I
hour
think they
warning.
did
I
kick
think.
you out because you went until you're away. Your AFK screen. Uh-oh.
Is everybody still here? Sound off?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think we're good now.
Okay.
It's
Hope
over.
so.
Yeah, I'm here.
The
Perfect.
apocalypse is over.
So Thomas begins to cry. He
Yeah,
runs
I think
his dirty hands through his hair, pulling it back from his forehead.
Arafor is stood behind Thomas so that Thomas can see Arafor, but Arafor can still see Thomas and Moira, and his hand is still glued to the hilt of his sword. Doesn't show that to Thomas, and he just looks at to Moira like, I don't know what's going on here. He doesn't say anything.
He's still crying, and he says, I told my father we shouldn't camp here, that we should keep going, but he wouldn't listen. He was always a stubborn man.
The Barrows are a dangerous place. Why were you here?
We thought we could cut through and do some hunting in the forest. Oh yeah, the rest of you definitely would have woken up by now.
I think Worry's just kind of like listening to him cry, and Arafor kind of like drill him. He's just like, what the heck's going on? And listening quietly.
Bod is upset that he was woken up. Little bastard.
Lily sees the young boy, and she's concerned. She's also knows she's in a dangerous place, in spite of all of her, like, I'll save everybody. She's got a certain amount of caution, and she kind of circles around maybe in the darkness so she can get closer and hopefully not be seen.
Yeah, you can give me a stealth roll.
Sure. Let's roll a good one.
Thomas looks at you through his tear-filled eyes, Moira, and he says, do you think my father is okay? Do you think he'll be all right?
How far? How long? Where? Where was he?
He shakes his head. I don't know. Seems like I ran for forever before I saw your light of your campfire. Will you help me find him?
Of course. In the morning. Our ranger here's one of the best trackers you'll find. I'm sure he can follow your steps back. Right, Arafor?
When Moira says yes, we'll help you, Arafor from behind Thomas just shoots her this look, just like wide-eyed, just like, what did you just say we're gonna do? But he would still just kind of stifling a grunt, just. Yes, if he's here and alive, I can find him.
I think you probably said it, but how old does this kid look?
He looks probably mid to late teens.
Okay.
He kind of looks at you and smiles weakly at you, Arafor. Thank you. Thank you. And then it's maybe he's looking and he's seeing your attire, and he says, "Are you a ranger? One of the men of the north?" And he kind of sucks up some of the snot that's running down out of his nose.
Yes, I am.
And he seems to brighten at that. well, well, then we'll find my father then.
We can try. As she said, in the morning. Birds are a dangerous place during the day, even more so at night.
Yeah. Yeah. You see him kind of struggling with that. And then he give me a persuasion roll. Era 4.
My specialty. Oh, for Air 4, that's not bad. 11.
He probably spends some time arguing with you to try to get you to go now. Saying that he's worried about his father. But ultimately he gives in and just solemnly nods his head. And he just kind of falls defeated on the ground near the fire.
How dark is it still out, or how late in the evening?
It's starlit evening. But beyond the stars, the moon is new, so it's lost in blackness.
But well past midnight, I'm kind of assuming.
You would guess it's probably sometime around midnight.
I assume that probably eventually this boy is going to go to sleep. Worry, I think, is going to wait for him to fall asleep, and then I'm going to go through his pockets.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, so it's not long before, just the what you would assume is the trials that this boy has gone through, that exhaustion overtakes him. I mean, he cries for a while, sobs, and it slowly fades to the sounds of his sleep. So you can give me a sleight of hand.
Moira will give you a dirty look as you do so and kind of whisper, "What are you doing?"
23.
Yeah, you go through his pockets and you find almost next to nothing except for a couple of copper coins.
Okay. After Moira watches him do that for a little bit, and he kind of just shrugs and heads back to sit down. He kind of looks at her and just like, "Kid, night, Downs? Mm-mm."
Moira looks down at this boy who's got to be close to the age her brother was. She just shakes her head at Worry. He's just a scared kid.
Oh, and that tree was just a helpful little root, wasn't it? Kind of sits back down, just kind of like satisfied now that at least, there's nothing weird on the kid itself.
Moira, almost as if to spite you, covers the boy up with a blanket. We will help him, won't we?
Maury kind of nods a little bit now.
Lily kind of whispers out of the darkness, provided she's hidden. Of course we will, but we have to be a little careful.
Worry
I
kind of
don't
looks
suppose I have
up.
much of a choice now, considering you've already to it.
Yeah, Worry would almost look over to Arafor when she kind of says that, and I don't want to say there's like this knowing look, but like, you know, Worry's probably heard a little bit of this area at least, and he's just a little like, come on, you got to be a little careful. You got to know where we're at and what we've just been through.
Even if this kid is earnest and not up to anything strange, he's still a liability. So is his father. Every day we spend in the Downs is another day in danger.
Worry nods in agreement. Don't you remember the Craven just a little while ago? And looks to Moira.
I'm not saying that we
They're
don't
not
help
here.
him. Just saying we be careful.
Very well. We'll be careful. Just hate to think of a family separated.
So with that, you continue your watches through the night, and the rest of the night goes uneventful. As the first rays of sun rise in the east, you all rise as well. Break your camp. Thomas, looking weary and worn, seems impatient to be on the path to look for his father. Several times he asks you, Moira and Arafor. And then you set off, with Thomas pointing the direction. The path is easy to follow as he begins to lead you to where he and his father were camped. And that's where we'll end the session for tonight.
What?
Man.
That's fair.
All right.
I was almost
Fair.
assuming it was going to be a really big cliffhanger since yesterday was kind of easy on us, or last time was easy on us.
No.
Oh, man.
Every time.
Oh.
All right. So we're going to end the broadcast right there.